Arrival on Nova Prime. In the vast emptiness of space, the interstellar ship Horizon sliced through the darkness like a gleaming arrow, its destination glowing in the distance, Nova Prime. Inside the bridge, Ambassador Rick Johnson stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his heart racing with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. At 45, he was one of Earth's most seasoned diplomats, yet nothing could prepare him for the enormity of this mission. Today marked humanity's first official diplomatic endeavor to an alien world, and the stakes were high. Entering Nova Prime's orbit in 5 minutes, announced Captain Sarah Chen from her command chair, her voice steady. Rick nodded, his mind racing through the limited information they had on the Novians. They were humanoid in appearance, technologically advanced, and apparently eager to engage in diplomacy. Still, this was uncharted territory. As the ship descended towards the orbital station, Dr. Maya Patel, the mission's xenobiologist, turned to Rick, her eyes bright with excitement. "Any last words of wisdom, Ambassador?" she asked, barely able to contain her enthusiasm. "Remember your training," Rick replied, his tone serious. "We're here to build bridges, not burn them. The Novians may look like us, but their culture could be vastly different. Stay respectful." The docking procedure went smoothly, and soon they were stepping through the airlock onto Nova Prime's orbital station. The architecture was breathtaking, with curved lines and iridescent surfaces that pulsed with an inner glow. A delegation of Novians awaited them, and Rick's breath caught in his throat as he took in their features. Their slightly larger eyes and shimmering skin made them strikingly beautiful and alien at the same time. "Welcome to Nova Prime," said the lead Novian, a graceful figure with an air of authority. "I am Zara, Chief of Interspecies Relations. We are honored by your presence." Rick felt a wave of relief wash over him. "The honor is ours, Chief Zara. We come in peace and friendship, eager to learn about your people and culture." Zara smiled, at least, Rick hoped it was a smile, and gestured for them to begin the tour. As they walked through the station, he noticed that the Novians maintained a careful distance from his team. This observation nagged at him, but he pushed it aside, focusing instead on the grand surroundings. The tour concluded in a large conference room, where Rick's team settled into their seats. Just then, a stern-faced Novian entered, flanked by 2 security personnel. "Ambassador Johnson," she began, her tone formal, "allow me to introduce Consul Aria, who will oversee our negotiations." Rick stood to greet her, his diplomatic instincts kicking in. "It's an honor, Consul." "Before we proceed," Aria interrupted, her voice sharp, "there are protocols you must understand. Chief among them is that there is to be absolutely no physical contact between our species. Is that clear?" Rick blinked, taken aback by her brusque manner. "Of course, Consul, but may I ask why?" "The reasons are not your concern," she replied coldly. "Simply follow the protocol." An awkward silence enveloped the room, and Rick glanced at his team, who wore expressions of confusion. Zara quickly interjected, suggesting they start with a brief overview of their respective cultures to establish common ground. For the next few hours, Rick found himself captivated by the Novian society, a culture that valued collective consciousness, advanced biotechnology, and a profound connection to their planet's ecosystem. Despite the engaging dialogue, Aria remained distant, her responses often curt and bordering on hostile. As the meeting drew to a close, Rick rose to address the room. "Thank you all for this illuminating discussion. I believe we've laid a strong foundation for future cooperation between our peoples." He turned to Aria, hoping to bridge their rocky start. "Despite our differences, I hope we can move forward in a spirit of mutual respect and understanding." He extended his hand, a reflexive diplomatic gesture ingrained in him after decades of negotiations. In a heartbeat, chaos erupted. Zara cried out in alarm, Aria's eyes widened in shock, and before Rick could comprehend his mistake, his hand clasped Aria's. A jolt like electricity surged through his body, and he watched in horror as Aria's eyes rolled back, and she crumpled to the floor. "What have you done?" Zara shouted, her friendly demeanor evaporating. The Novian guards surged forward, weapons drawn. "You were expressly forbidden from physical contact." "I didn't mean to. It was an accident," Rick pleaded, panic rising in his chest. A groan from the floor drew everyone's attention. Aria stirred, her eyes fluttering open. As she sat up, she fixed Rick with a venomous gaze. "You fool. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Before Rick could respond, another Novian burst into the room, conferring urgently with Zara. When Zara turned to Rick, her expression was a mix of disgust and disbelief. "Ambassador Johnson, scans confirm that you have impregnated Consul Aria." Rick's jaw dropped in shock. "That's impossible. We only touched hands for a second." Which was more than enough time for a transfer of nanites. Aria spat, struggling to her feet. "Your human DNA has merged with mine. A new consciousness is already forming." Rick's mind reeled. This couldn't be happening. It had to be a misunderstanding. "Please," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "There must be some mistake. Let's discuss this calmly." "There will be no more discussion," Zara cut him off, her voice trembling with barely suppressed rage. "You and your team are confined to your quarters until we decide how to handle this violation. Guards, escort them out." As they were led away, Rick caught a final glimpse of Aria. The hatred in her eyes chilled him to the bone. Whatever bridges he had hoped to build between their species had just gone up in flames. Back in their quarters, Rick's team erupted into a frenzy of questions. "How could you be so careless?" Dr. Pertel demanded. "You're supposed to be our top diplomat." "It was an accident," Rick shot back, pacing like a caged animal. "How was I supposed to know a simple handshake could cause whatever this is?" Captain Chen, ever the voice of reason, stepped between them. "Arguing won't solve anything. We need to figure out our next move. The mission is clearly in jeopardy, and if we're not careful, this could spiral into an interplanetary incident." Rick ran a hand through his hair, mind racing. "You're right. We need more information. Maya, what do you make of this nanite transfer they mentioned?" Dr. Patel frowned, her scientific curiosity overtaking her earlier anger. "It's fascinating, really. Their biology must be radically different from ours to allow for such rapid genetic exchange. But without more data, I can't even begin to understand the mechanics of it." A chime at the door interrupted their discussion. A grim-faced Novian guard entered, flanked by two others. "Ambassador Johnson," the guard announced, "your presence is required in the medical bay for examination. The rest of you will remain here under guard." Rick's team protested, but he waved them off. "It's all right. I'll go peacefully. Maybe we can sort this mess out." As he was led through the station's winding corridors, Rick's mind swirled with possible scenarios and diplomatic strategies, but nothing in his years of experience had prepared him for anything like this. The medical bay was a marvel of alien technology. Sleek machines hummed and pulsed with an otherworldly energy. In the center of the room stood Aria, her face a mask of cold fury. "Lie down," she commanded, pointing to an examination table. Rick complied, his heart pounding. "Consul, please, can we talk about this? There has to be a way to—" Silence. Aria snapped, turning to a Novian doctor. "Begin the scan. I want to know exactly what his human DNA is doing to my system." As the scan commenced, Rick felt a tingling sensation throughout his body. Holographic displays sprang to life around him, showing swirling patterns of light he couldn't begin to interpret. The doctor's eyes widened as he studied the readouts. "Fascinating," he murmured. "The merger is progressing far more rapidly than anticipated. The new consciousness is already beginning to form neural pathways." Aria's face paled. "How is that possible? It's only been a few hours." "It seems the human's genetic material is catalyzing the process in unexpected ways," the doctor replied. "This hybrid entity could be unlike anything we've ever seen." Rick's head swam with the implications. Wait, are you saying that this child, or whatever it is, will be born soon? Enough. A new voice rang out. Zara strode into the medical bay, her earlier diplomatic demeanor replaced by an aura of command. The High Council has made its decision, Ambassador Johnson. Your reckless actions have placed our entire planet at risk. You and your team will be detained indefinitely while we determine how to proceed. Rick sat up, desperation clawing at him. Please be reasonable. This was an accident, not an act of aggression. Surely we can find a peaceful resolution. Zara's expression softened slightly. I understand this was unintentional, Ambassador, but intentions matter little. In the face of potential catastrophe, the hybridization process you've initiated is unprecedented. Until we understand its full implications, we cannot risk further contamination. As Novian guards moved to escort him out, Rick locked eyes with Aria. For a fleeting moment, he thought he saw a flicker of something beyond anger in her gaze, fear, perhaps, or uncertainty. What will happen to her? Rick asked Zara, nodding towards Aria. That is no longer your concern, Zara replied coldly. Guards, return the ambassador to his quarters. Full lockdown protocols are now in effect. As Rick was led away, his mind raced. He had come to Nova Prime to forge a connection between their species, yet he had created one in a way he could never have imagined. The doors to his quarters hissed shut behind him, the ominous sound of multiple locks engaging. His team looked up, hope fading from their eyes as they saw his grim expression. How bad is it? Captain Chen asked. Rick sank into a chair, the weight of the situation crushing down on him. Bad, he said quietly. Very, very bad. As he recounted what had transpired in the medical bay, Rick couldn't shake the image of Aria's face from his mind. Somewhere on this alien station, a new life was forming, a bridge between their species, but one that threatened to become a chasm instead. He had come to Nova Prime to make history. Now he feared he had set both their worlds on a collision course with disaster. Rick stood frozen at the viewport of his quarters, staring out at the alien stars. The diplomatic catastrophe he had unwittingly triggered threatened to escalate into an interplanetary conflict. He had to do something, and fast. A soft chime from his communicator jolted him from his thoughts. An encrypted message flashed on the screen. Asterisk Medical Bay 200. Come alone, asterisk. Rick's heart raced. Aria wanted to meet. It could be a trap, but it was also the first potential breakthrough they had since being confined. What is it? Captain Chen asked, noticing his reaction. Rick hesitated for only a moment. Nothing important, just another warning to stay put. He couldn't risk anyone trying to stop him from this clandestine meeting. When the station's chronometer ticked over to 1:55, Rick put his plan into action. Earlier, he had discovered a minor glitch in the door's locking mechanism, not enough to escape completely, but sufficient to slip out undetected. The corridors were eerily silent as Rick made his way to the medical bay, every shadow seeming to conceal a guard ready to apprehend him. Yet he reached his destination without incident, slipping inside the dimly lit room. I wasn't sure you'd come. Aria's voice startled him as she stepped out from behind a bank of medical equipment, her expression unreadable. Rick's diplomatic training kicked in. I'm here to find a solution, Consul, for both our peoples. Aria's eyes narrowed. And what solution do you propose for this abomination growing inside me? The harshness of her words stung, but Rick pressed on. It's not an abomination. It's a bridge between our species, a chance for understanding we never could have imagined. You don't understand what you've done, Aria hissed, advancing on him. This bridge could destroy everything, our culture, our very way of life. Rick stood his ground. Or it could be the key to a future of cooperation and shared knowledge. Aria, please help me understand your fears. Something in his tone seemed to reach her. Aria's shoulders sagged slightly, the mask of anger slipping to reveal a flash of vulnerability. You want to understand? Fine, follow me. She led him to a secluded corner of the medical bay, activating a holographic display. Rick's eyes widened as he saw a swirling mass of light and color pulsing with an otherworldly rhythm. "This is the developing consciousness inside me," Arya explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's evolving at an unprecedented rate. Our scientists can barely comprehend what they're seeing." Rick stared at the display, mesmerized. "It's beautiful," he breathed. Arya's head snapped toward him, eyes flashing. "It's dangerous. This hybrid mind has the potential to outstrip both our species, to become something beyond our control." "Or to bridge the gap between us," Rick countered. "Think of the potential. This could be the greatest diplomatic breakthrough in history." "At what cost?" Arya demanded, but there was a note of uncertainty in her voice now, a crack in her resolve. Rick took a chance, reaching out to take her hand. This time, there was no shock, no transfer of nanites, just the warmth of skin on skin. "We can face this together," he said softly. "Let me help you. Let me understand your world, your culture. There has to be a way forward that doesn't end in fear and isolation." Arya's fingers tightened around his, her eyes searching his face for a long moment. Neither of them spoke. Then, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. From that night on, Rick and Arya began a dangerous dance of clandestine meetings and forbidden exchanges under the guise of medical checkups. They spent hours talking, sharing the intricacies of their respective cultures and the fears that drove them. Rick learned about the Novians' deep connection to their collective consciousness, how the idea of individual thought was both thrilling and terrifying to them. In turn, Arya came to understand the human drive for exploration and connection. As the days passed, the conversations grew more personal, the barriers between them crumbling. Rick found himself captivated by Arya's quick wit and hidden warmth. Arya discovered a gentleness in Rick that belied his forceful diplomatic persona. One night, as they pored over data on the developing hybrid consciousness, their hands brushed. The simple touch sent a jolt through both of them, far more potent than any nanite transfer. Their eyes met, and in that moment, everything changed. Their lips came together in a kiss that defied physics and biology, two alien beings finding a connection that transcended species. When they finally parted, both were breathless. "This is madness," Arya whispered, but she made no move to pull away. "Perhaps," Rick replied, his heart racing, "but it might also be our only hope." The unexpected bond. In the dim light of the medical bay, the air crackled with an energy that was both exhilarating and terrifying. Rick and Arya stood frozen in the aftermath of their kiss, the boundaries between their worlds blurring in a way neither had anticipated. For Rick, this moment felt monumental, a shift in the fabric of not just their relationship, but potentially the future of both species. "What does this mean for us?" Arya asked, her voice barely a whisper as she searched Rick's eyes for answers. Rick took a deep breath, grappling with the weight of her question. "It means we have a chance to redefine our destinies. This hybrid child, it could be the key to uniting our peoples, a symbol of hope rather than division." Arya's expression softened, but doubt lingered in her gaze. "You don't understand the implications. If this child embodies traits from both our species, it might possess powers beyond our comprehension. It could be perceived as a threat." Rick stepped closer, feeling the warmth radiating from her. "But it could also show that we can coexist, that our differences can lead to something greater." As the hours passed, the conversations grew deeper. They shared stories of their pasts. Rick recounted the struggles of humanity, the wars fought, and the peace forged through understanding. Arya, in turn, revealed the Novians' own history, rich with tales of their civilization's rise from conflict to harmony through a collective consciousness that valued every voice. "Tell me more about your culture," Rick urged, eager to bridge the gap. "What does it mean to be part of this collective consciousness?" Arya hesitated, searching for the right words. "In our society, individuality is seen as a double-edged sword. It can fuel creativity but also sow discord. We've learned to think as one, our emotions, our thoughts, all interconnected. Yet, the idea of individual identity is complicated. Some see it as a necessary evolution, while others fear it could unravel our society. Rick nodded, absorbing her words. In humanity, we celebrate individuality. Each person brings a unique perspective to the table, but that doesn't mean we don't face our own struggles. Look at our history. It's filled with conflict born from misunderstanding. Aria's gaze flickered with intrigue. So, you embrace conflict as part of growth. Not conflict for conflict's sake, Rick clarified, but through facing challenges, we learn and evolve. Perhaps we can teach each other. Your understanding of unity can complement our individuality, and together we can find a balance. As they delved into these discussions, time seemed to fade away. Rick found himself captivated not only by Aria's intellect, but by the emotional depth she displayed. Each shared story unraveled the threads of fear that had initially separated them, weaving a bond that felt more profound than either could have imagined. Yet, the reality of their situation loomed over them like a shadow. The hybrid child, the very reason for their clandestine meetings, was a growing concern. What do you think the High Council will decide? Rick asked, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. Aria's expression hardened as she considered the question. They will likely see this as a violation of our protocols, an accident of your making that threatens our society. There are those who will demand strict measures to contain the situation, perhaps even view the child as an abomination. But it's not just a child, Rick pressed, urgency creeping into his voice. It's a bridge, an opportunity to change the narrative, to foster understanding between our peoples. Your optimism is admirable, but naive, Aria replied, her tone wavering between frustration and admiration. The council will not see it that way. They are bound by tradition, by the fear of the unknown. If they perceive a threat, they will act decisively. Rick sighed, feeling the weight of their predicament. Then we need to find a way to convince them. We can't let fear dictate the future. Aria nodded, a flicker of determination igniting in her eyes. We must gather evidence, present our case, show them that this child is not a threat, but a potential for unity. With their plan forming, they spent the next few days in a whirlwind of activity. Each secret meeting in the medical bay was filled with hushed discussions, brainstorming ideas, and collecting data to present to the High Council. They analyzed the readings from the scans, focusing on the developing consciousness within Aria, hoping to find a way to demonstrate its potential for harmony. As the days turned into weeks, the bond between Rick and Aria deepened. They discovered shared passions. Both loved storytelling, whether through ancient texts or modern media. They would spend hours exchanging tales of heroism and hope, laughter punctuating their conversations as they bridged the gap between their worlds. One evening, as they shared stories, Aria paused, a thoughtful expression on her face. Rick, I've been wondering about your species' approach to emotion. How do you manage the chaos of individual feelings? Rick chuckled lightly. It's a challenge, for sure. We experience the full spectrum of emotions, joy, sorrow, anger. But we believe in the power of communication. Sharing our feelings helps us connect, heal, and grow stronger together. Aria's eyes sparkled with curiosity. Perhaps there's something we can learn from you. Our society has always prioritized the collective, sometimes at the cost of individual expression. Maybe we can explore a middle ground. Rick smiled, encouraged by her willingness to embrace new ideas. Exactly. Just like our relationship, our societies can learn from one another. We can find a way to honor our differences while celebrating our commonalities. Yet, even as they forged this connection, the external pressure grew. The High Council had summoned Rick for a hearing regarding the incident. The day arrived with a heavy atmosphere, tension hanging in the air as he prepared to face the consequences of his actions. Stay calm, Aria advised, her voice steady as they approached the council chamber. Remember, we are presenting a united front. We believe in the potential of this child. As they entered the grand hall, Rick's heart raced. The council members sat in a semicircle, their expressions grave. Zora was there, her eyes piercing as they locked onto Rick's. "Ambassador Johnson," Zora began, her voice echoing in the vast space, "you stand before us today for violating our most sacred protocol, engaging in physical contact with a Novian. Your actions have led to a potentially catastrophic situation." Rick swallowed hard, feeling the weight of their scrutiny. "I understand the gravity of the situation," he said, his voice steady. "But I urge you to consider the potential this hybrid child represents, a bridge between our species that can foster understanding and cooperation." A murmur rippled through the council. Zora's expression remained impassive as she continued, "And how can we trust that this hybrid will not endanger our society? You've initiated a process that defies our very nature." Arya stepped forward, her voice strong. "We have gathered evidence that shows the potential for this hybrid consciousness to unite our peoples rather than divide them. This is an opportunity for both species to learn and grow together." Rick felt a surge of pride as Arya spoke, her conviction shining through. "We stand before you not just as representatives of our respective worlds, but as individuals committed to creating a brighter future. We believe this child could symbolize that future." The council deliberated, their discussions hushed and tense. Rick could feel the weight of their gazes, the uncertainty hanging in the air. Finally, Zara spoke again, her tone softer. "We must consider the implications of this union. The potential for disaster is great, but so too is the potential for cooperation." Rick held his breath, hoping against hope that they would see the possibility in their union. "We will take your plea under advisement," Zora finally announced. "But until we fully understand the implications of this hybridization, we must impose restrictions. You and your team will remain on the station until we reach a decision." Rick felt a wave of relief wash over him, mixed with frustration. While they hadn't gained complete freedom, it was a start, a chance to continue their discussions and work toward a solution. As they left the council chamber, Rick turned to Arya, a mixture of hope and determination in his eyes. "We still have a chance. We can show them the potential we've discovered together." Arya nodded, a glimmer of belief igniting in her gaze. "Yes, together we can forge a new path. For us and for the child." With renewed purpose, Rick and Arya dedicated themselves to their mission, ready to face the challenges ahead, united in their desire to bridge the gap between their worlds. A growing connection. The atmosphere aboard the Horizon had shifted since Rick and Arya's meeting with the High Council. Though they remained under observation, the tension that had once enveloped the ship began to lift slightly, replaced by a sense of purpose. With each passing day, their bond deepened, and the urgency of their situation propelled them forward. In the days following the council's hearing, Rick and Arya convened regularly in the medical bay, transforming it into their secret sanctuary. Here, they explored the developing consciousness inside Arya, gathering data and brainstorming ways to present their case to the council. The sterile walls, once cold and unwelcoming, now bore witness to laughter, shared dreams, and heartfelt confessions. As they worked side by side, Rick felt a shift within himself. The warmth of Arya's presence ignited a flame of hope and possibility that he hadn't anticipated. The conversations flowed freely, touching on topics that transcended their immediate challenges: art, philosophy, and the stories that shaped their cultures. One evening, as they analyzed the latest scans of the hybrid consciousness, Rick looked up to find Arya studying him intently. "What do you miss the most about Earth?" she asked, her voice soft, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. Rick pondered the question, his gaze drifting toward the viewport where the stars twinkled like diamonds against the blackness of space. "I miss the simplicity of it," he replied, a smile creeping onto his lips. "The sound of rain on the roof, the smell of fresh coffee in the morning, and the way the sun sets over the horizon. Those small moments bring a sense of peace that's hard to find in the chaos of interstellar diplomacy." Arya's eyes shimmered with curiosity. What about the stories you tell? Do they reflect these moments? Absolutely, Rick said, his enthusiasm building. Stories are a way for us to make sense of the world, to connect with each other. Every story holds a piece of our humanity, our triumphs, our failures, our hopes. They remind us of who we are. What stories are most cherished among your people? Arya inquired, leaning forward, captivated by his words. Rick chuckled softly, remembering a tale from his childhood. There's one about a small boy who wanted to touch the stars. He built a rocket out of scrap metal and took off into the night sky. He faced countless challenges, but he never gave up. In the end, he didn't reach the stars, but he discovered something even more important: the power of perseverance and the courage to dream. Arya listened intently, her expression thoughtful. That's beautiful. In our culture, we have stories that teach the importance of unity. They often feature individuals who sacrifice for the greater good, demonstrating that true strength lies in togetherness. Perhaps we can merge our stories, Rick suggested, his mind racing with ideas. What if we create a new narrative, one that combines our experiences? It could show both our strengths and how we can learn from each other. Arya's eyes brightened with excitement. I love that idea. We can craft a tale about a hero from each of our worlds who come together to face a common challenge. Their journey could symbolize our own struggle to unite. As the days turned into weeks, their collaboration blossomed. They crafted a story about two protagonists, one a determined human explorer and the other a wise Novian diplomat. Their mission was to resolve a conflict threatening both their worlds, and through their journey, they discovered the beauty of their differences and the power of empathy. With every word they wrote, Rick felt the barriers between their cultures eroding. Their shared narrative became a metaphor for their growing connection, a testament to the possibilities that lay ahead if they dared to embrace each other's worlds. But as their bond deepened, so did the tension in the wider political landscape. Whispers of dissent began to circulate among the Novians. There were factions within the council who viewed the hybridization as a threat, pushing for stricter measures against Rick and his team. Fearful of the unknown, they rallied against the idea of coexistence, urging the council to take a hardline approach. One evening, as Rick and Arya prepared for another meeting, Zara summoned Rick to the council chamber. "Ambassador Johnson, the council wishes to speak with you regarding the recent developments," she said, her tone grave. Rick's heart sank. "Is it about the hybrid child?" he asked, dread pooling in his stomach. Zara nodded. "There are concerns among the members. Some believe that the hybridization process poses a risk to Novian purity and stability. They wish to discuss potential measures to prevent further complications." Rick's mind raced, desperate for a way to counter the growing opposition. "I need Arya with me. We must present a united front." As they entered the chamber, the atmosphere was charged with tension. Council members regarded Rick with a mixture of scrutiny and suspicion. Zara stood at the forefront, her expression firm. "Ambassador Johnson, we convene today to address the ongoing situation regarding your presence on Nova Prime and the implications of your actions." Rick took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of composure. "I understand your concerns. However, I urge you to consider the data Arya and I have gathered. The child is not a threat. It represents an unprecedented opportunity for both our species to learn from one another." Several council members murmured amongst themselves, their expressions skeptical. "And what guarantees do you offer that this hybrid will not destabilize our society?" One elder Novian asked, skepticism etched in his features. "We cannot offer guarantees," Arya interjected, her voice steady. "But we can present evidence of the hybrid consciousness's potential for unity. This child can bridge our cultures, fostering a new understanding that could benefit both our worlds." Rick felt a swell of pride as Arya spoke. Her conviction was palpable, a reminder of why they were fighting this battle together. Zara's gaze pierced through the tension in the room. "We must be cautious, Ambassador. The fear of the unknown is a powerful motivator. Our society is built on principles of stability and tradition. I understand, Rick replied, his voice unwavering. But isn't it our responsibility to evolve, to confront our fears and embrace the unknown? Together, we can create a narrative that inspires hope rather than fear. The council members exchanged glances, weighing his words. Rick seized the moment, drawing on the story they had created together. Imagine a future where our societies collaborate, sharing knowledge, resources, and culture. A future where our children can grow up knowing that differences are not something to be feared, but celebrated. A low murmur spread through the council as members considered Rick's plea. Yet, Zara's expression remained stoic. We will deliberate on your proposal. In the meantime, you and your team are to remain under observation. Further contact with Novian citizens is prohibited until we reach a decision. As Rick left the chamber, his heart raced with a mix of hope and frustration. They had made progress, but the road ahead remained fraught with challenges. Back in the medical bay, he shared the outcome with Arya. They're still hesitant, but I think we've planted a seed of doubt about their fears, he said, running a hand through his hair. Arya nodded, her expression a mix of determination and worry. We need to strengthen our case. Perhaps we can conduct more in-depth studies on the hybrid consciousness. Show them its potential for empathy and understanding. I agree, Rick replied. We can't afford to lose momentum. We need to show them that our union can inspire change, not chaos. As they delved deeper into their research, their relationship blossomed further. The shared purpose ignited a passion that transcended their initial connection. Each late-night brainstorming session and collaborative effort brought them closer, solidifying the bond that had begun to form amidst chaos. One evening, as they reviewed the latest scans, Rick looked up and found Arya watching him with an intensity that made his heart race. "You've changed me, Rick," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never thought I could feel this way about a human. You've opened my eyes to new possibilities." Rick stepped closer, feeling a surge of emotion. "And you've changed me, Arya. You've shown me that the barriers we've built can be broken down. Together, we can create a future where our peoples coexist and thrive." They stood together in the soft glow of the medical bay, the stars visible through the viewport. In that moment, Rick realized that their journey was not just about bridging two worlds. It was about forging a new identity, one that honored both humanity and Novian heritage. As the days turned into weeks, Rick and Arya continued to work tirelessly on their research and the narrative they were crafting. The once sterile environment of the medical bay now felt like a haven, filled with the echoes of their laughter and shared dreams. Each revelation, each moment of connection, brought them closer to their ultimate goal, a future where both their worlds could thrive together. With determination in their hearts and the weight of their peoples on their shoulders, they pressed on, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, united in their pursuit of hope and understanding. Facing the storm days turned into a blur of activity aboard the horizon, where Rick and Arya worked tirelessly to gather more data on the hybrid consciousness developing within her. Their collaborative efforts fostered a burgeoning camaraderie, one that steadily blossomed into a deep emotional bond. Yet, lurking beneath the surface of their shared mission was a growing tension, both within the council chambers and among the Novian citizens who had begun to express their fears and doubts about this unprecedented union. As they prepared for another session in the medical bay, Rick felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. They were on the brink of unveiling a series of findings that could change the trajectory of their mission. "Today, we present our analysis of the hybrid consciousness," he said, his voice steady as he looked at Arya, who was poring over the data on her holographic display. "If we can show them its potential for empathy and understanding, it might convince the council to reconsider their stance." Arya nodded, her determination evident. "We need to frame this not just as an experiment, but as a testament to what we can achieve together. This child could symbolize a new era of cooperation, one that transcends fear and distrust." They spent hours synthesizing their research into a compelling narrative, highlighting the hybrid's capabilities, its ability to process emotions, learn from both cultures, and even enhance communication between their species. The narrative took shape not just as a report, but as a story that reflected their journey together, showcasing the transformative power of their bond. Imagine the implications if we can prove that our differences can create something beautiful, Rick said, his enthusiasm palpable. This child can be a beacon of hope, a living embodiment of what can happen when we dare to embrace the unknown. Just as they were about to finalize their presentation, a sudden alarm blared throughout the station, sending a jolt of panic through Rick's body. The lights flickered, and the air was filled with a sense of urgency. "What's happening?" he asked, his heart racing. Aria's eyes widened in alarm as she turned to the communications panel. "It seems there's a disturbance among the Novian citizens. They're rallying outside the council chambers." Rick felt a sinking feeling in his stomach. "Are they protesting? This is the last thing we need right now." "Let's go," Aria urged, determination set in her features. "We need to understand what's happening. If fear is driving them, we have to address it." Together, they made their way through the bustling corridors of the orbital station, the energy in the air thick with anxiety. As they approached the council chambers, they could hear the distant murmur of voices growing louder, punctuated by shouts of dissent. When they reached the entrance, the scene before them was chaotic. A crowd of Novians had gathered, their expressions a mixture of anger and fear. Banners waved in the air, some bearing messages that echoed distrust toward the hybrid child. "No hybrids." One banner read, "Protect our purity," shouted another. Rick's heart sank at the sight. "This is not good," he murmured to Aria, who stood beside him, her face pale. "They're afraid of what they don't understand." "Fear can lead to irrational decisions," Aria replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil. "We must speak to them, try to bridge this gap." Together, they stepped into the fray, approaching the crowd. As they drew nearer, the murmur of voices quieted, and the attention shifted to the two of them. Rick felt the weight of their scrutiny, but he steeled himself, drawing on the courage he had developed through countless diplomatic negotiations. "Citizens of Nova Prime," he called out, raising his voice to be heard above the growing tension. "I understand your fears, but I implore you to listen. The hybrid child is not a threat. It is a symbol of what we can achieve together. This child represents hope, understanding, and a bridge between our species." The crowd reacted with a mix of skepticism and curiosity. Murmurs rippled through the gathering, but Rick pressed on. "Aria and I are here not just as representatives of our worlds, but as individuals who believe in the power of unity. We have the opportunity to create something beautiful, a future where our cultures coexist and thrive." Aria stepped forward, her presence commanding as she addressed the crowd. "I understand the fear of the unknown, but we cannot let it dictate our actions. Together, we have the chance to build a society that values both our identities. The hybrid child is a chance for empathy and understanding, a living testament to our shared journey." A young Novian stepped forward, her eyes blazing with defiance. "But how can we trust that this child won't bring chaos? We've always valued our traditions, our purity." Rick took a deep breath, rounding himself. "I understand your concerns, but history teaches us that growth often comes from embracing change. Look at the stories of our past. Every significant advancement arose from a willingness to step into the unknown. By uniting, we can learn from one another's strengths and address our weaknesses." Aria added, "We can create a future that honors both our peoples, preserving what we cherish while embracing what we can learn together. Fear should not divide us. It should motivate us to find common ground." The crowd shifted, their expressions a mixture of contemplation and lingering doubt. Rick felt a flicker of hope as he continued, "Imagine a world where our children can learn from one another, where the tales of our cultures enrich each other. The hybrid child could pave the way for generations to come, helping us heal and grow." For a moment, silence enveloped the crowd. Then, one by one, voices began to rise in support of their message. The young Novian who had challenged them stepped back, her defiance wavering as she listened to the growing momentum of hope. "Perhaps we should consider this," she murmured, glancing around at the faces of her fellow citizens. As the atmosphere shifted, Rick and Arya exchanged a glance, their hearts pounding with a renewed sense of purpose. They had sparked a glimmer of understanding, but they knew their work was far from over. "Thank you for your willingness to listen," Rick said, his voice firm yet compassionate. "Change is never easy, but together, we can create a narrative of hope instead of fear. We must stand united." The crowd began to disperse slowly, the energy shifting from one of anger to contemplation. Though the road ahead would undoubtedly be fraught with challenges, Rick felt a surge of optimism. They had taken the first steps toward bridging the divide, but they needed to maintain this momentum. Later that evening, back in the relative safety of the medical bay, Rick and Arya reflected on the day's events. "I think we made progress," Arya said, her eyes bright with determination. "But it's just the beginning. The Council still holds significant power over our future." Rick nodded, rubbing his temples in thought. "We need to leverage this moment. If we can get more citizens on our side, we can put pressure on the Council to reconsider their stance. They may be afraid, but the voices of the people can be powerful." As they continued their research and preparation, Rick couldn't shake the feeling that they were at a turning point. Each day brought new challenges, but with every obstacle, the connection grew stronger. The shared experience of facing adversity had forged an unbreakable bond between them, one that transcended the boundaries of their cultures. Weeks passed, and the atmosphere aboard the Horizon shifted as citizens began to express curiosity rather than outright fear. They would often approach Rick and Arya, asking questions about their findings and sharing their hopes for the future. This burgeoning dialogue ignited a spark of hope that spread throughout the station. During one of their late-night brainstorming sessions, as they continued to refine their narrative, Rick turned to Arya. "What if we host a gathering? A community event where we can share our story, the data we've collected, and celebrate our cultures? It could provide a platform for understanding and collaboration." Arya's eyes lit up with excitement. "That's a brilliant idea. We can invite citizens from both our worlds to participate, share food, stories, and traditions. It would allow everyone to see the value in our connection." With renewed energy, they set to work organizing the event. They collaborated with Novian and human volunteers to arrange for food, cultural displays, and presentations highlighting the potential of the hybrid child. The anticipation in the air was palpable as citizens began to rally around the idea of unity. On the day of the gathering, the orbital station was alive with activity. Banners adorned the halls, colorful displays showcasing both human and Novian cultures. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement and hope as citizens mingled, sharing laughter and stories. As Rick and Arya took to the stage, the crowd quieted, all eyes on them. Rick felt a mix of exhilaration and nerves as he prepared to address the gathering. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady. "Today, we celebrate our shared humanity and Novian heritage. This event symbolizes the potential that lies within our unity." Arya stepped beside him, her presence radiating confidence. "Together, we are stronger." The hybrid child represents a new beginning, a bridge that can connect our two worlds. Today, we invite you to share in this journey with us. Rick and Arya presented their findings, illustrating the hybrid consciousness's potential for fostering empathy and understanding. They shared personal stories about their journey, weaving together the themes of hope, resilience, and the beauty of diversity. As the event unfolded, the crowd began to warm up, asking questions and expressing their thoughts. The fear that had once gripped them started to dissipate, replaced by a sense of community and shared purpose. By the end of the day, Rick and Arya stood on the stage, overwhelmed by the energy that filled the room. Cheers erupted as citizens expressed their support for the hybrid child, their voices ringing out in unison. "Together, we can create a brighter future. one voice shouted, igniting a chorus of agreement. Rick exchanged a glance with Arya, both of them beaming with pride. They had taken a significant step toward changing the narrative, moving beyond fear to embrace possibility. As the celebration continued, Rick felt a deep sense of gratitude. Their shared journey had transformed into something greater, a movement fueled by hope and the promise of a new beginning. The path ahead remained uncertain, but they faced it together, ready to forge a future where their worlds could coexist in harmony. Building bridges. In the days following the community gathering, the atmosphere aboard the horizon remained charged with a renewed sense of hope and possibility. The event had ignited a fire among the citizens of Nova Prime, with many expressing a desire to learn more about humanity and the hybrid child that symbolized their potential union. Rick and Arya found themselves at the center of a movement, a burgeoning coalition of individuals eager to bridge the gap between their worlds. As they returned to the medical bay for their daily discussions, Rick felt the weight of their shared responsibility. "We've created momentum," he said, pacing the room. "But we need to ensure this enthusiasm translates into actionable change." Arya nodded in agreement, her expression thoughtful. "We should create workshops, spaces where Novians and humans can come together to learn from one another. By fostering understanding on a personal level, we can dismantle the remaining barriers of fear." Rick's eyes sparkled with excitement at the idea. "That's brilliant. We could have cultural exchanges, storytelling sessions, and collaborative projects that highlight our strengths and differences. If we can showcase the beauty in our diversity, it will strengthen our cause." They set to work organizing a series of workshops that would bring together citizens from both species. The excitement was palpable as word spread throughout the station, and volunteers from both sides eagerly signed up to participate. The workshops included everything from art and music to science and technology, emphasizing the importance of collaboration and understanding. On the day of the first workshop, the medical bay buzzed with energy. Novian and human citizens filled the space, mingling and sharing stories. Colorful banners adorned the walls, each representing different aspects of both cultures, showcasing their rich histories and traditions. Rick stood at the entrance, welcoming attendees with a warm smile. As he watched the diverse crowd interact, he felt a swell of pride. "This is it," he thought. "We're building something meaningful." Arya joined him, her eyes shining with excitement. "I can't believe how many people showed up. This is just the beginning." As the workshops commenced, Rick facilitated a session on storytelling, where participants shared their favorite tales from their respective cultures. The room was filled with laughter and awe as they exchanged stories, discovering common themes of heroism, sacrifice, and hope. One Novian, a young woman named Lyra, shared a traditional Novian tale about a mythical being who journeyed through the stars, seeking knowledge and understanding. "In our stories, the stars represent the connections we can forge with others," she explained. "Each star is a voice, a perspective that enriches our collective consciousness." Rick was captivated by her passion. "In human culture, we have a similar belief," he responded. "We often say that every person's story adds a unique thread to the tapestry of humanity. Together, we create a more vibrant and colorful world." As the day progressed, participants began to share their experiences and cultural practices. Novians introduced humans to their music, characterized by ethereal melodies and harmonious rhythms, while humans showcased their own diverse genres, from rock to classical. The exchange of sounds and styles resonated deeply, drawing everyone into a shared experience of creativity. In the afternoon, Arya led a workshop focused on empathy and communication. "Our societies have thrived on understanding one another," she emphasized, her voice filled with conviction. "Through empathy, we can break down the barriers that fear has built between us." Participants engaged in activities designed to foster empathy, such as role-playing exercises and group discussions. Rick watched as Novians and humans stepped into each other's shoes, learning to appreciate different perspectives and experiences. The barriers that had once seemed insurmountable began to dissolve in the face of shared humanity. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the orbital station, Rick and Aria gathered everyone for a closing ceremony. "Today has been incredible," Rick said, standing before the crowd. "We've taken significant steps toward building bridges between our worlds. Together, we've showcased our strengths and celebrated our differences." Aria continued, "This is just the beginning. Let this day be a reminder that unity is not merely a dream, it is a reality we can achieve together. The hybrid child represents the future we can create, one that honors both our cultures." The audience erupted in applause, their faces filled with hope and determination. Rick felt a surge of gratitude as he looked at Aria, who stood beside him, her expression radiant. They had ignited something within the hearts of their people, a desire for connection that transcended fear. As the workshops continued over the following weeks, Rick and Aria saw tangible progress. Citizens began to form friendships across cultural lines, sharing meals, participating in joint projects, and exploring the nuances of each other's languages. The once tense atmosphere of the station began to transform into one of camaraderie and mutual respect. However, the ripple effects of their initiative were not without challenges. Some Novians remained resistant to change, clinging to their fears of the unknown. A small faction, driven by a desire to maintain tradition at all costs, began to rally against the workshops, spreading rumors and inciting unrest among the population. Rick and Aria became aware of this growing dissent through whispers in the corridors and concerned citizens approaching them with trepidation. "It seems not everyone is on board with our mission," Aria said, her brow furrowing in concern. "We must address this before it escalates." "Absolutely," Rick replied, a sense of urgency gripping him. "We need to find a way to engage with those who oppose us. If we ignore their fears, we risk deepening the divide." They decided to host a public forum, a space for open dialogue where citizens could voice their concerns and engage in constructive discussions. It was a daunting prospect, but they believed it was essential for fostering understanding. On the day of the forum, the council chambers buzzed with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Citizens filled the seats, the atmosphere charged with uncertainty. As Rick and Aria took the stage, they could feel the weight of expectation pressing down upon them. "Thank you all for being here," Rick began, his voice steady despite the palpable tension in the room. "Today we gather not only to share our visions of the future, but also to listen, to truly listen, to each other's concerns." Aria stepped forward, her expression earnest. "We recognize that change can be frightening. We want to create a space where everyone's voice is heard, and where we can address the fears that have surfaced." The audience murmured, some nodding in agreement, while others crossed their arms defensively. Rick continued, "Let's start by acknowledging the concerns that have been raised. We want to understand what fears you have about the hybrid child and our cultural exchange initiatives." A murmur of dissent rippled through the crowd, and a familiar face emerged from the back, Lyra, the young woman who had shared her story during the workshops. "What guarantee do we have that this hybrid child won't disrupt our society? Our way of life is built on tradition, and we cannot afford to lose that." Rick took a deep breath, aware that this was a pivotal moment. "I understand your concerns, Lyra, but I believe that tradition doesn't have to mean stagnation. Embracing change doesn't erase our history, it enriches it. We have the chance to create a new narrative, one that honors our past while paving the way for a future filled with possibility." As the forum progressed, more voices rose in both support and opposition. Some citizens shared their apprehensions about the unknown, while others expressed their excitement about the potential for collaboration. The tension in the room began to shift as they engaged in genuine dialogue, revealing the complexities of their emotions. Aria skillfully facilitated the discussions, encouraging empathy and understanding. "It's important to remember that our fears are valid," she emphasized. "But we must also consider the potential benefits that can arise from this union. The hybrid child could symbolize a new chapter in our shared story, one that unites us rather than divides us." Slowly, as voices mingled and perspectives collided, a sense of understanding began to emerge. Rick watched as citizens shared their stories of hope and uncertainty, each person contributing to a collective narrative that transcended fear. By the end of the forum, the air felt lighter, the barriers beginning to dissolve. As they left the council chambers, Rick turned to Arya, a mixture of pride and relief flooding his chest. "I think we made progress today. There's still a long way to go, but we opened up a space for dialogue." Arya smiled, her expression a mix of determination and hope. "Every conversation counts. We have to keep pushing forward, showing them the value of unity." Over the following weeks, Rick and Arya dedicated themselves to maintaining the momentum they had built. They organized more workshops, community events, and public discussions, ensuring that every citizen felt involved in the process. Their efforts began to bear fruit, with more citizens voicing their support for the hybrid child and the cultural exchanges. But just as things began to stabilize, a shocking development occurred. Rumors of a secret faction seeking to undermine their efforts began to circulate. This group, comprised of Novians who rejected any form of collaboration with humans, sought to sway public opinion against the hybrid child and the cultural exchange initiatives. Rick and Arya received word of this faction's plans during a late-night meeting. "They're organizing protests," Arya said, her expression grave. "If we don't act quickly, we could face a significant setback." "We need to counter their narrative," Rick replied, determination setting in. "We can't let fear win. We need to hold another public forum, but this time we'll invite them to voice their concerns directly." "That's risky," Arya warned, her brow furrowed. "What if they incite violence? It could put everyone in danger." Rick shook his head. "We have to confront them. If we let fear dictate our actions, we'll never break through. We must demonstrate that open dialogue is the only way forward." With their plan in place, they prepared for the upcoming forum, steeling themselves for the confrontation that lay ahead. The stakes had never been higher, but they were resolute in their commitment to bridging the gap between their worlds.